Hello and welcome back to Myths and Legends at the Grand Ledge Area District Library. I'm Jean Fellows. Today we're going to take another look at the myths and legends of Persia, and we'll explore the story of the Persian Cinderella. Wait, where is Persia? That's a good question. Let's look at a map. If we look at a map of the world, and I can enable my pointer, I can show us that here we are in the United States of America, and this little spot right here is Michigan. So to find Persia, we have to cross the Atlantic Ocean, go into the Mediterranean Sea, and end up here in the Middle East. And here is an ancient map that shows us in a little bit more detail the Persian Empire at its greatest extent. In the pale green shading, you can see all of the area covered up into what's now China, over to India, down into Arabia, over into North Africa. And Persia is what we now refer to, it's the modern Iran. And here are the boundaries of the modern Iran outlined in green. So I found all this information, as you might suspect, on the website of the Grand Ledge Area District Library. You can use the website to navigate through our library catalog and search Persia. And you can also use our school tools link, which will take you to encyclopedias, which also have listings on Persia. This one will show you images and videos and give you some copy and information and background information. The Persian Empire was at its largest when Darius I died in 486 BC. It was a mighty kingdom centered in what is now Iran. So, some of the architecture in Persia is, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, Apadna and Persepolis. Persian kings built a hall called Apadna in the city of Persepolis about 2,500 years ago. Here's a stairway to the hall that still stands. There are carvings showing a lion attacking a bull, and you can see other carvings telling stories here on the sides of the building and on the columns. When we look at some art like this and architecture, it tells us a lot about the advanced culture of ancient Persia. Now, the story today we'll examine is the Persian Cinderella. And as you listen, think about the story. Is it like a story you've heard before? So if we've heard the Cinderella story before, and we know that Persia's culture dates back 2,500 years, I guess the question is, which story do you think came first? Long ago, when Persia was a land of princes and poets, there lived a maiden named Sitara. Her name meant star, and it was given to her on the day she was born because of a star-shaped mark on her left cheek. Sitara had scarcely opened her eyes to see or her mouth to cry when her mother died. Although she lived with her stepmother, 2 stepsisters, 3 aunts, and 4 female cousins in the women's part of the house, she was often lonely. Sitara seldom saw her father, for he was busy in the world of men. Her stepmother and aunts ignored her, paying no more heed to her than a fly on the wall. She belonged to no one, and nothing belonged to her. She wore her stepsisters' cast-off clothes and ate their leftovers, sometimes finding only melon rinds to fill her dish. Even so, Sotera grew lovelier with the years. The brows above her dark eyes arched as gracefully as the path of an arrow, and her long black hair gleamed like polished ebony. She was delicate, with slender ankles and tiny feet, but her beauty only added to her misery, for it made her stepsisters jealous. Sometimes Leela, the older sister, would pinch Sotera's cheek and scoff, that's not a star, it's a dirty spot. Nahid, the second sister, would wrinkle her nose in disgust. Our little sister must wash in a mud puddle. Then Sitara would run into the walled garden and scrub her face in the fountain, but she could never rub off the mark. One morning in late winter, Sitara's father honored the women's quarters with a visit. Prince Midrad invites all to the royal palace for Nowruz, the New Year, he announced. Opening his money pouch, he gave everyone a large gold coin. Buy cloth in the bazaar to make new clothes, he told them. As he handed Sitara her coin, he patted her hand and added, choose wisely. Each girl and every woman, no matter her age, covered her head with a cloak so no stranger might look on her face. Then, like a flock of blackbirds, the mothers, daughters, sisters, and cousins flew down the road to the marketplace. The bazaar's covered street was lined with shops and crowded with animals and people. Goats bleated and donkeys brayed. Merchants hawked pearls drawn from the waters of the Persian Sea, and traders shouted prices for silks brought by camel caravans from faraway China. Carpets woven in jewel-like colors brightened the walls, and the scent of ginger and cinnamon from the Indies and perfumed oils from Egypt hung in the air. Sitara sniffed something else familiar too. Toasted almonds! She turned and saw a peddler stirring a pan of nuts over a brazier. She'd had nothing to eat that day, and her mouth watered. Shyly, Sotera held out her gold coin. Quickly, the peddler snatched it. He gave her a wrapper of warm almonds and a handful of small silver coins in return. Sotera finished the nuts in 2 mouthfuls and then counted her money. "I can still buy cloth," she said. She pushed through the crowds, anxious to find her family again. But as she hurried, a wrinkled woman tugged on her cloak and held out a brass bowl. "Spare a coin, young mistress?" she begged. Sotera hesitated. The old lady was shivering, and her robe hung in tatters. "You are more in need of new clothes than I, grandmother," Sotera said. Opening her fingers, she let most of her coins clatter into the woman's bowl. "Good fortune come to you," the crone cried, "and soon." Sotera smiled and looked down at her remaining coins. "At least I may buy a new sash." As she hastened past a pottery stall, Sotera saw a small jug lying in the dust. It was made of ordinary clay, and a jagged crack ran down one side, but it was glazed with a blue as bright as the sky, and Sotera could not take her eyes from it. "That pot, is it for sale?" she asked the shopkeeper. He peered at her. "It is worth much," he began. Sotera couldn't resist picking up the jug. It felt as warm to her touch as something alive. "This is all I have," she offered him her last 3 coins. "Please?" The shopkeeper sold Sitara the little blue jug. Well, her stepsisters could not believe what Sotera had bought with her money. "A leaky old pot!" squealed Nahid. "Now you'll have nothing new to wear for no ruse," Lila scolded. "That's unlucky, and you will disgrace us." "Then I shall not go to Prince Medrad's festival," Sitara retorted. But she feared she had not chosen wisely. No ruse was only 8 days away. The new year began on the first day of spring. Already the snow that iced the Alborz mountains was melting beneath the midday sun, and many-colored wildflowers carpeted the hillsides. Inside the women's quarters, everyone was busy measuring and cutting and stitching their new clothes. Sotera sat alone in the garden, listening to the call of a turtle dove in the pomegranate tree and holding her little blue jug. "Oh, I don't care if you are cracked," Sotera rubbed the pot with her finger, "but I wish you were filled with jasmine blossoms." The jug began to quiver and her fingertips tingled. Suddenly the air was sweet with fragrance, and her jar brimmed with white flowers. "Oh, magic!" she gasped. Outside, the jug looked as always. On the inside, perhaps a pari? Well, if the fairy granted one wish, would it grant another? "Please, little jug," Sotera whispered. "I am hungry." A basket of figs and apricots appeared before her. Then she said, "Little jug, I'm cold." And at once she was wrapped in a warm shawl of the softest goat hair. She said, "Little jug, I am lonely." The dove flew down from the tree, perched on her shoulder, and cooed in her ear. Sotera did not ask for any more. She was fearing that her stepmothers and her stepsisters might notice. The pari in the jar was her own secret. Now everyone is preparing for the festival. They've all made their new clothes. And Sotera, because she has no new clothes, must stay home. But her little jug helps her out with beautiful new clothing to wear and special jewelry and even diamond anklets. After she was dressed, one magic moment later, she found herself outside Prince Madrad's palace. Sotera climbed the marble staircase and glanced timidly into the arcade on her right. A handsome youth stared boldly back at her, smiled, and stroked his beard. Sotera clutched her scarf to her face and fled through the arcade on her left. She found herself in a huge hall filled with women. They sat on silk cushions and helped themselves to heaping trays of roast lamb and whitefish, to spiced cucumbers, sweet oranges, and tart rhubarb, and to goblets of sherbet cooled with mountain snow. Musicians plucked tunes on lutes and zithers, and cymbals rang as dancers twirled. Magicians juggled flashing knives, snake charmers from India coaxed cobras from their baskets. Poets rhymed verses, and fortune tellers read the future from their star charts. No one recognized Sitara. She kept her head bent and her star mark hidden. Even Leila and Nahid, dazzled by her finery, believed her to be a princess from a distant land. When the rushlights burned low, the music and amusements ended. "Oh, how could time fly so?" said Sitara, dismayed. She would pay a dear price if her stepmother returned and found her bed empty. Sitara fled from the palace, running through the twisting streets. In her haste, she did not feel a diamond bangle slip from her ankle. She did not hear it splash into the shallow canal that flowed beside the road. She did not discover her loss until she reached home. All night the anklet lay in the ditch, but in the morning the sun shone on the water and made the diamond splash. A horse, drinking from the ditch, snorted and reared. "Steady!" shouted the stable boy, tugging at the reins. "He fished the anklet from the water. I must show this to my master." "Extraordinary!" the horse master exclaimed, blinking at the band of diamonds. "I must take this to the palace." "A tiny treasure," Prince Madrad declared, dangling the bangle from his finger. "I must find the one who wore it." "How can a man look for a maiden?" asked Madrad's mother, the queen. "What do you know of women and their ways?" She rose. "I myself will find the owner of that anklet." So now we have some questions to ask. We think, who it is that helps Sitara? What do you think is a pari? So who's that handsome youth that Sitara sees at the party? And we know she's lost something when she's leaving the party. Will it fit her sisters? Will the sisters play a cruel trick on her? And will the handsome youth rescue her? The best way to find the answers to that is to finish reading the book. And since it's in the collection at the Grand Ledge Area District Library, you can find it by looking online in our library catalog, which will then take you, if you Google the Prince, or if you search the Persian Cinderella, it will bring up this listing, and you can place a hold on it and have the book ready for you to pick up or placed in one of our outdoor lockers for you. And this is a little bit more description about it here. And we now know that it was written by Shirley Klimo, and Robert Florzak did the stunning paintings that accompany that. So I hope you get a chance to check this out and read the rest of the story and see the rest of the beautiful artwork. You can visit the Grand Ledge Area District Library in person or on our website, and you can find more ways to explore myths and legends from around the world. We'll have updated content on our YouTube channel. You can keep up with all of our activities on Facebook, and you can find more activities for reading, science, and just plain fun on our Curious Glottal page. Thank you for joining us today. See you next time.